Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce the President of the CAS, Miss Nancy Braithwaite.
Well, I was already enjoying our guest speaker, so sorry about that. Welcome again to the CAS 2017 spring meeting. I'll now introduce our featured speaker, Eric Garland. Eric is a founder and director of Competitive Futures, a competitive analysis firm that provides insight and guidance to corporate clients and government agencies. His talk today will be about the future of risk, evolving foresight for a world in transition. Eric's bio is included in the spring meeting app, so there's no need for me to repeat it here. Please join me in welcoming Eric.
Can everyone hear me? Good morning. Very, very excited to be here in Canada to talk about risk. This is the part of North America that didn't set its banking sector on fire a few years back. So this is a good kind of home base. We're talking about taking care of things. I grew up on the Canadian border in Vermont, so I always feel coming to Canada is a little bit like coming home. Aussi, il y a des Franco-Canadiens ici? Hey, salut. I will do this for you in French afterwards if you'd like. But for now, if we can do English, that's awesome. I'm really excited to be here, and when they contacted me about speaking about the future of risk, I thought, and the concept we came up with was kind of an interprofessional discussion, because my background is in looking at the future, scenarios, that kind of thing, and that's for both risks and opportunities, which is not so different from you all. And I have great respect for what you do specifically, not just as actuarials. I understand the differences between casualty actuarials and other types. We discussed this, but also I've worked with worker safety and Bureau of Labor Statistics and whatnot, and what you guys do is essential to keep people who are working healthy, companies healthy, economies healthy, so this is pretty important stuff. We're going to talk about the future of what this general looking at the future of risk is, and we're going to have a lighthearted attitude, but we got some space for serious questions. If there's something you got to get out, throw a hand up, get a mic, start yelling. Let's talk about these things. Just a little bit of background where I come from. Mentioned I run a consultancy that does strategic analysis for companies and governments and whatnot. My background is in competitive intelligence, is companies looking at each other for clues about the future of the market. And eventually I started working in think tanks that did nothing but look 5 to 20 years down the road. Some people call us futurists. I like to say strategic analysis. But my focus is things that haven't happened yet, kind of like you. Worked for a variety of Fortune 100, et cetera. My real interest here, and this is the cool thing, the keynote I'm giving you, I'm not done looking at this subject. I'm interested in how you combine visions of the future with the day-to-day management. It's great to tell the future, but what do we do Tuesday? Tomorrow, when we fire up our email and we're going to make some calls and we're going to invest in something, what are we going to do with that vision of the future we've come up with? That's what obsesses me. It has for 20 years and it's going to for another 20 more. My weakness, why I work at all, is expensive bass guitars, and my hope for the future is to increasingly make analysis sophisticated so we can have a better world. So the TLDR, and for those of you who are not in internet code, that's too long, didn't read. If you walked out right now, I got a few future trends for you. We're going to collect a bunch more data through sensors and other things. Our software is going to help us not just answer questions, but ask it, especially as artificial intelligence improves and hopefully doesn't just take over society and make us the worker bees. So that's the hope. And all of this is going to be considerably more complex, which I know in 2017 is difficult to envision. But the implications here is going to be that we're going to be looking for more sophisticated models as we incorporate more and more factors in a global economy. The data stuff's very interesting because we're getting to a brand new era of privacy concerns that I think will be particularly interesting for folks that are looking at safety issues and how much data we can collect on a person. So we'll talk about that. I think we're going to have some catastrophes where we just don't understand how our models had missed the new complexities. We've already seen a few of those. We'll see some more. And I think our overall challenge is going to be to merge both qualitative and imaginative and visionary methods with the quantitative stuff that we really depend on for rigor. So that's where we're going. Join me. So I've been looking at the future for a lot of years, and some people make fun of this task. They're like, look, you can't know the future, so it's impossible, so why try? And it's kind of funny to say that, you know, it's impossible because there's so many people interested in it. Like just a short list of folks that want to look at the future of risk. You CEOs, financial people, product managers. We've got this new thing we're investing in. We're going to launch it and sell it to people. Supply chain, what part of the country or world is that going to come from? Geopolitics, you know, let's not go to war. Really anything you're looking at. Futurists who do it especially. Moms, dads. I don't know, for those of you who had kids, how many of you got that much more sensitive to the most low probability, ridiculous, negative scenarios? I have 2 children, and I don't think I ever got over the following around an 18-month-old that is starting to learn to walk and imagining that eyeball could hit that corner, that could catch on fire. Probably not, but maybe. It just sent all the negative scenario circuits off in my head, and when I see other people's kids, it never turns off, I've learned. So you're gonna get a puppy, you're looking at the future. That's a 5 to 10 year thing, right? College major. You know, it's too bad we don't give, you know, if you're going to spend the amount of money tuition costs, like, why don't we hand you a futurist? Like, you're not picking for today's job market. Anyone who has babies. And, oh, if you want to retire, maybe look at the future. So this is a pretty broad-ranging thing. We're going to talk about some specifics for the professionals, but everybody wants to know the future. And we suck at it. It is an eternal human activity that we're really bad at. And I think it goes back to, all the way back to the caveman days. And you can see it all throughout civilization. A fundamental issue, we're fragile. We have bodies that break down. Nature owns us, not the other way around, which we've known forever. And we build such beautiful structures. Sometimes we forget. But we've always been under threat, and so we have tried a variety of ways to understand how to guess what's next. We've tried some, you know, superstition, certain religions. Well, maybe if we make a deal with uncertainty, are there some rules we could follow that'll help improve things? But, you know, the tools just weren't very sophisticated. So as we moved on, you get soothsayers and prophets, and, you know, the Greeks and the Egyptians would go into battle with somebody like, let's get a guy who can look at the future. And, you know, even if he can't, he says he can, that'll make us feel better. And the problem is data set. We have been throughout our species history in search of a data set. Has anyone heard the term roll the bones? Some Canadians are in here who know Rush albums, so that should, thank you, my people. This originally comes from getting sheep knuckles and rolling the bones to see how many points on these uneven surfaces would come up. And they would try and discern the future from that data set. It's like the desire to know the future was already in us, and we had to go to the inside of like sheep legs and buffaloes and stuff in order to just give, okay, I want to do this, give me a data set. All right, here's some knuckles. And there's what, and that became dice, where instead of the uneven surface, we just put a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on there. And we still have games with that, casinos. a common metaphor for this is reading the tea leaves. Have you ever seen reading tea leaves before? This is the Chinese tea leaf reading. You'd get a glass of tea, and you'd like let the water dry or boil it off, and see those symbols on the sides of the cup? Whatever leaves like stuck more to those symbols, man, that's where this is going. So it is the same impulse, crappy data set, crappy tools. We're getting there, and probably some good decisions came out of those models, right? Or they wouldn't have used them. If there was no pattern that formed up, this is pre-statistical curves, derivations from the mean. It helped. It made people feel better, and it drove them further down in the practice and the development. Really, one of the big drivers of looking at risk is technology, which we as humans keep innovating on from the Stone Age on up. And actually, I come from the world of futurists, and the modern era of future studies and scenario planning comes from technology, specifically nuclear weapons. Really, warfare hadn't fundamentally changed from the Romans up to World War II until the nuclear bomb. Because you still had, as a concept, infantry, guys on the ground running with a stick or with something that shoots, or a bayonet, or cavalry. I know, we'll put them on a horse. We'll put them on something bigger than just a guy. And those will be the important, the heavy troops. And then throw something at them, catapults or bombers. So we'll set something on fire, we'll break it, we'll blow it up. Really, you had people in war colleges that had been studying Julius Caesar versus Pompey Magnus and those tactics up until the modern era, because you needed to know that stuff, and they still teach that stuff. It hadn't fundamentally changed until they invented nuclear technology, and they went, wait, this is new, we can kill everyone now. And this was about 1949-50, when they were thinking these things. They're like, oh, we didn't really know the Russians have this now. Oh, we'd better think quick. And so they actually invented these technologies, or these techniques, I should say, of developing scenarios, forecasting technology, asking questions about implications. What does this mean? Because they realized warfare had just changed, and the consequences for this could not be more severe. So they invented all these new techniques for thinking. Herman Kahn is really the father of the field in America, and he wrote a book called On Thermonuclear War. That's some beach reading for this summer. And he was the first guy to think very critically and speak absolutely without fear of the consequences for how scared people were going to be. It was like, here's all the different scenarios for how nuclear war might turn out. Here's where we all die. Here's where 90% of us die. In this kind of a situation, we get them, they only get half of us. China we'll have 1,000 people left. China will have 100,000. Chilling. People did not even want to say what they thought that were in the know. But these techniques were born, and they sort of became the practice of futurists and strategic analysts. And okay, how do we look at what the internet's going to do? How do we look at any technology? Self-driving cars, nanotechnology, all that stuff. And throughout history, we've been terrible at this. So I just want to give you some risk opportunity analysis failure from the technology division. Clickety. You would make a ship that sails against the winds and tides. I have no use for such nonsense. Any clue as to who said that? Boom, who's that? Napoleon, boom. Napoleon Bonaparte, to Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamship, thought it was the most ridiculous thing he'd heard of, which is weird because Napoleon was totally obsessed with technology as a driver. He invented the modern war college, created the Army Corps of Engineers in France, made the School of Mines and Bridges like sort of the central, it's still one of the most important schools in France. The guy was super into math, technology, how to apply it. But man, that steamship is stupid. It's a dumb idea. So Which brings me to, how many people work with smart people? Come on, everybody. I know there may be some office politics right now, but come on. Well, not Frank, but everybody else. I understand. My mentor was a futurist for the US Congress by the name of Joe Coates. I stole every idea I possibly could from him, and he said, the problem is not smartness. He says, I work with smart people every day. Very smart people, 130 IQ and above. It's not the point. It's how we think about things. It's the culture of how we challenge that thinking. So you can have somebody who is the smartest and even an expert at a thing, and they'll still miss. It's why we all need each other and we all need to communicate intra-professionally. Like this forecast for telecommunications, too many shortcomings to this telephone to be seriously considered as a means of communication. This device is inherently of no use to us. Any guesses? Western Union. Why would I want to spend time yammering on the phone, hearing someone's voice, when I can very easily... What other modern marvels do we require? Oop. And let's see. We got the telegraph there, and one of the angles of technology forecasting is that pretty much with every telecommunications technology that comes out, we predict world peace and free education. So how's it going? For one, telegraph comes out, boom, we're going to get world peace. Because see, all of this is we've had a problem of communication. If we could just talk to the Huns, if we could just talk to the Mongol hordes in advance, or the Romans, or the Gauls, or whatever, we could have just worked all that stuff out. So if we can, now we can have, diplomacy, like really quick. So world peace, no problem. And of course we get military tactics and coordinating supply chains, and no, actually we're still going to kill each other, we're just going to find ways to make it more efficient. But the initial forecast, world peace. So we'll move up, we need to get, well, clearly we're brutes and we need to just be more sophisticated about things. So we get up to the telephone. Well, Western Union blew this one, but we got it. Because, boom, world peace. Because now we can hear the mellifluous, gentle voice of these diplomats we've been trying to reach. Like the Gauls and the Romans could have worked it out if there had just been a telephone. No problem. The Mongols and the Chinese could have come to an agreement much sooner. Of course, you get the Army Signal Corps. No, let's call in some bombing and some chemical gases for the trenches. And the telephone also, we can now spread education everywhere. We can have phone lines in every schoolroom. We can spread around free education. Raise your hand if you are paying tuition to a college or other private institution. Anyone? So the free education thing is still sucking wind. That's too bad. But we just need to get more sophisticated. We're going to get there. Now, radio was going to actually add some to this. You're going to get world peace. You're going to get free education. And as a special bonus, you're going to get like only 3 or 4 languages. Because like now, like, there's all these dialects, but once people can hear each other's languages and they have some exposure to each other, they're just going to merge down into one language. Et pour les franco-canadiennes ici, juste comme prévision, c'est pas terrible. Turns out we didn't get world peace, and we didn't get just one language. Turns out there's a lot of identity and importance and knowledge into that, so that one keeps failing. Now we can do bombing runs. We got radios that go all the way up to the planes. So technology, that's one of our great desires, that it's going to bring world peace and free education. And this internet thing, we're living in a century that has the fewest casualties from state-to-state war. And terrorism is down from the 20th century. We have this communication device that tells us about all these things in our pocket and makes us really amped up and really anxious. Actually, the trend's getting much better if you look at the stats, which few people do. So if we are getting there, it's probably because of some other fundamental human activities, but not the technologies itself. So, I bring the tech up because in the casualty actuarial world, you've got a lot of challenges that are coming ahead. You're looking at workplaces that are increasingly automated. How many of you got like rock solid models around self-driving cars? This guy right here. He's going to dominate the market. All right. Self-driving bulldozers. By the way, if I get into an accident with a self-driving car, who do I sue? Do I sue the manufacturer? Do I sue the software company?
Everyone, yes.
I sue. We just found the attorneys in the room. Sue everybody. Just name everyone in the suit and let them pay off. Okay, that's a good strategy. I was doing forecasting the future of nanotechnology 15 years ago. Speaking of which, got that one wrong. Thought it was going to come way, way quicker than it did. As you guys know, if you do forecasting and models long enough, you'll see some pretty good successes and probably some failures. And we were looking at nanotech years ago. It's like, this is within 10 years of revolutionizing everything. Wrong, got it wrong. It was revolutionizing tennis balls, making them springier. Making construction glass shinier without having to wash it as much. That was cool. But we were talking, and I believe we got into some worker safety conversations, and some folks who made safety equipment were like, so tell us again about these small particles that are going to pass through traditional respirators. Like, do we have any models on how that's going to affect lungs? And we looked at the technology guys, they're like, yeah, we don't know. So we are still galloping in terms of technology in these directions, and we need some foresight, not unlike, we got nukes. We better think about this because we're going to have war. This is why I wanted to tell you today about thinking more largely about technology and how it might impact your models, because it changes what you'll be looking at in terms of risk. So, there's a non-military example of risk assessment failure that is humorous. And I just want to talk about how the best laid plans of mice and men, because quants and marketing and consumer behavior, one of the greatest examples, Duncan Hines Cake decides to go in the 80s into Japan. And man, they brought every tool and technique they had. It was awesome. They did consumer marketing studies. They looked at the taste profiles of various Japanese consumers, because it was the 80s, Japanese had all this money, going to sell stuff to them. And they had every quantitative technique down, because it was starting to get really sophisticated by the 80s in marketing. And there was just one problem. They didn't do much of a study of the actual physical plant of where Japanese people were living, and Japanese folks do not have ovens. Because their traditional architecture is made of wood and paper, and they would have earthquakes a lot, and if that ever fell over onto a fire in your home, everything would burn. So much so that arson was the greatest crime in ancient Japan. If anyone intentionally set a fire, they killed you, they killed all your family. So you get the electric hot pots, but having open flame or open heat producing enclosures in homes, not so much. So the cake sales did not go as the models suggested. I have less humorous issues that are not military either, that have really caught my attention and made me a little angry and made me think really hard about, okay, how sure are we with all these models that people tell us are so secure? And my company started looking at the housing markets. So we're actually based in Washington, D.C., and when the houses doubled in value in like 8 minutes or whatever it was, after 9/11, there were some banking policies that changed, and there was a depression a lot of people did not discuss. Travel just collapsed, and folks in central positions we got to do something. And there was sort of a tacit agreement somewhere between banks and government people in the United States that, well, we're going to have a housing boom. And we're just going to loosen up on our risk assessment. We're not going to look so hard at whether a financial instrument is really quite as risky as they're saying. We're not going to look at as hard at your income. And so you get this is from 1987 through 2016. You see that curve there starting in 2001, where the median is at 100, and it goes up to over 200 in a variety of composites of housing markets. And of course, in 2008, everything blew up. And you could actually see this coming. We made a model that narrowed it down to 2008 because of what the adjustable rate mortgages were going to swing. Like late 07 is like, oh, that'll probably blow up a lot. So, but everyone else acted surprised. There were other folks who guessed the timing on this. I don't want to medal for it. Had I been really smart, we'd have started a hedge fund to take advantage of this. But my question was, we had all these smart people, and how did we miss it? And they had, oh guys, quants? This is Wall Street. They had formulas. Oh my God, they had formulas. They had, for the derivatives, and this assumes this amount of shock. We got this. It's the new normal. Bang. I got fed a PDF that went to Congress that said, if you don't have a bailout for us by the weekend, it's going to be martial law. We'll have food shortages, food riots. This hit the news, kind of, and then went away. I had a British counterpart that informed the UK Parliament. Said, if we do not act within the next hour and a half, it will be shopping through violence for the foreseeable future. Now there's a statement. How did we miss this? So many people were so sure, and we had quantitative models. What is it we didn't understand? In a lot of cases, we've blown that asset bubble back up. I don't think we've asked the right questions, nor have we sought the right answers. So this is still on our plate. Another issue that had another event that had plenty of quantitative work and risk analysis behind it was the Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan. They had done a risk analysis, I think 2 years, some years before the tsunami and earthquake that ended up with a central core meltdown. Sorry, it was 10 years. And they said this would happen once per million years, based on their models of what they knew of the construction types and what they knew of earthquake and tsunami patterns, that this would happen once in a million years, and it happened within 10. So you guys are better at math than I am, but it was like a 1 in a trillion chance. So they had this model, and it didn't just fail, it almost annihilated the country. They are having robots go into that sector now, and the robots stop functioning. Not people, robots can't function in the radioactivity there. So we have some questions about, all right, we have models that function most of the time, but when they fail big. This is a lot of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's work with anti-fragility and black swans, where we have a long tail risk that what really gets us is a failure of imagination, not just a failure of quantitative model. What do we do about it? Well, we should talk about it, because we're still going to make things and do things. We should figure out what our policy is on that. So our current predicament is, as we integrate more tightly in global markets, and we have some policies that make a lot of monopolies and oligopolies, we've been concentrating our industries, and we've been integrating the complexity of our supply chains without much thought to exactly how complex that is going to make everything and what fat tail risks exist. We're probably going to see black swans more likely. And I just want to talk about some of the scenario models that I'm used to working with. We have a thing called an impact probability matrix, where you've got scenarios, and you can place them on this chart. You can do more than 4. I always do at least 4, because 1 is the official view, 2 is either or, a false binary. 3, you'll have a false moderate scenario in the middle. You'll want to be more moderate when sometimes the future isn't moderate. At least 4 makes you pick, makes you think it through. And so we go around from the impact and the probability. If it's low impact and high probability, that's the standard scenario, so business as usual. The low impact and low probability is there's something new on the horizon, but it actually doesn't do anything. Like, yeah, self-driving cars, but it doesn't do anything for safety. It doesn't matter. It's probably a low probability, but it's a flash in the pan. High impact, low probability, boom, something really important that happens that you didn't see coming. And strategic shift is high probability, high impact. You see it, you know it's changing, and it changes things in ways you didn't imagine. Some people think that the black swan means boom, when it really means it's not even on the chart. It's not a thing you could even conceive of. It's a result of the complexity where the world changed in a way, and it was beyond our capacity to imagine. And so that's where you get more of a need for a narrative view, talking to each other, and not just as a way to make new models. I shouldn't say either or. I think they work in concert. And I'm thinking about some of the future here, and I'm about to go through the structural trends that are going to change our industry. And I got a matrix of data availability and model strength. And essentially that we've got a tension between how much we know a model works in terms of predictability and whether we need more data for it or less data for it. And here's the thing, I don't know what your models are going to be like because it's different for each of you, but we're going to take care of that data problem. And it's going to be kind of interesting. And it's going to have a lot to it, so I want to talk about the implications with you because I don't know all the answers. Driving the future of risk analysis, we've got a few strategic trends here. Moore's Law, sensors, quantum computing, what I call massive data, advancing algorithms, virtual reality, and the human element. So, how many of you are familiar with Gordon Moore's forecast of the 1960s? It's that circuit density will increase with price staying the same every 18 months. It is the best tech forecast in history. Outside of, no, this new communications technology will not create world peace or make education free. That's the second best. But this one, basically, computers are going to get more awesome. I mean, I think we can all, how many of you had an Atari? How many of you had a Commodore 64? Yeah. Quant folk, yeah, we were messing. If you were that age, you were messing around in the Commodore 64. And things are more awesome today, so quod erat demonstrandum. Don't got to talk about that one anymore. The real, I think probably the most important trend out there right now is the proliferation of sensors, which sounds kind of general, but we are putting data capture smaller, cheaper, in more places than ever before, and it's going to give us this massive data that we don't even know what we can do with it yet. How many of you have an iWatch? Not a great product launch. Okay, pretty.
Not what it's called.
What's that?
Not what it's called.
What's it called?
Apple Watch.
Apple Watch. I apologize. How many of you have an Apple Watch? Is that? We're being detailed. Okay, I got one extra. Thank you. You guys are actuarials. Details matter. I'm here for this. Totally cool with correction. That's absolutely correct. I was like, I have like a bucket of Apple products, and I was like, the watch? Well, you don't have to reach into your pocket for the less than 1 pound device. You can get your email right on. You saved that much energy. I was like, okay. And I talked to some people in Silicon Valley about this, and they're like, nah, see, you've missed it. The whole point there was it was the last distance we needed to bridge with the individual. I'm like, okay, this sounds ominous, I'm listening. We wanted contact with your body. This is some conspiracy stuff here. I mean, this is starting like, wait a minute, are you our new robot overlords? What is this? they've already got what information you search for. They've already got, if you've got one of these phones and you don't have your location sensor turned off, or maybe even if you do, they know where you go. They can identify you as an individual. But they wanted haptics. They wanted contact with your body, and they got those health apps on there. Let's find out what happens to your body. Now, by the way, what do you think the implications of that could be for the future of advertising or political communications? When does your pulse go up? When do you produce more heat? When do you produce more signs of anxiety? If I can coordinate that data set with what you're watching or reading, down to the individual, I might know a lot about you. When the final story comes out about the 2016 election in the United States, there's going to be quite a bit about a company called Cambridge Analytica that apparently made brand new models of voters down to the individual, combining some traditional voter rolls and some data scraped from Facebook massively. And it's being investigated right now. But either way, there is, we have lots of interest in whether the government can invade our privacy, but we have private companies right now that are involved in capturing data. And we've tried, again, remember the problem is data set. Do we have enough data, and can we put it together in smart ways? Well, now, man, the data's getting really good. We're not rolling bones. We're measuring your blood pressure, and your temperature, and your pulse, and where you are. And now they're developing, the advertisers, they look for clicks, right? Oh, we're going past that to gestures. How far did you scroll down? How engaged were you? How much did your arm move? How far is that from, did your eyes twitch? What did you look at specifically? It's getting pretty precise. And while we have democratic measures in place, we have laws and judges and statutes to deal with whether an agent of a government can come in and capture data, each one of us is increasingly our own broadcasting center. Forget social media. Hey, I'm in Toronto. It's really great. Send, which it is. We are constantly, through various devices, we're emanating data all the time, and someone's capturing it. And we don't have laws on what they can do with it. Will we make laws? Well, we had to make laws when we got telephones. We're like, wait a minute, can anyone just tap this? Can anyone just read my mail? We put laws in. Got to invent it first before we can regulate it. But there are some folks who are like, no, we won't need to regulate that. That's a private entity. Yes, but we might be coordinating sports advertising with my blood pressure. So might want to discuss that a little more. And wait a minute, you guys work in worker safety and casualty. Well, I mean, it's in the companies that you cover in terms of insurance, or the employers that you are or represent. It's in your interest to know everything about these workers, to know whether they're going to be safe or not. That'll help you make your model. And wouldn't a swab of DNA do just that as well? I mean, we want to know if there's some genetic issue that might make you dangerous at work and might hurt you. We might need that information. Is that an ethical discussion that you all have had yet? Because when decoding a genome was really expensive, it wasn't worth discussing. We're going to do Craig Venters first, and it's going to cost $100 bajillion. And now they keep dropping the cost of that. And they're going to get it within $100. Do you want, are there insurance companies that want that information? Are you going to make a model out of that? Too much information can be quite a thing. So, bottom, in general, our ability to cut this data up quicker is going up. And Microsoft's forecast, first quantum computer will be in operation by 2026. Is anyone familiar with quantum computing? Has anyone seen the video of the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, explaining quantum computing? If you'd like to compare our heads of state right now, somebody sends a question like, hey, explain quantum computing. He's like, well, quantum computing happens when you've got the electron that actually can be in both phases at the same time, so it's not just a binary switch. He just goes in and it's like, all right, you win, dude. Literally, quantum computing was one of the first forecasts I did when I sat down in 1999 in DC at the Coates and Jarrett think tank, and it's 2017, and we still keep pushing this forward, but they're working on it, and in general, you're looking at more and more computing processing power, not just memory and whatnot. So in general, there are going to be ways to process this data in real time, maybe. And if you believe in the quantum computing forecast, dream, then it could be radically more powerful. So, I don't know, what can you do with radically more powerful? I probably couldn't have guessed all the things 15 years ago that we'd have for apps and, it'll affect taxis, what? But just in general, more horsepower to do what you want to do. In general, we're looking at this concept. I'm going beyond big data, and I haven't set a trademark down on it, but I should. Massive data, which basically means the same thing. But I mean, think about the amount, each line in a spreadsheet represented by his blood pressure was this, he drove here, he hit his brakes here, this happened. And we're talking about massive amounts of data that maybe can be correlated depending on how they're tagged, and that's a challenge we're going to figure out. But I have a friend who's in the network security world, and he was telling me about computer processing topography, where basically the data sets on these networks are so big, they have to make maps that look like this, where they go from the specifics of analytics, which sounds like very broken down, to like, look at the big red thing. Like, there's a thing over there, go look at it. Why is that thing? I've noticed working with computer people that there's like this curve of language sophistication. There's like, if you don't know anything about computers, it's like, I don't know, I hit the on button. Someone changed the internet. They changed my internet. And then you get on to, well, that's a TCP IP issue, and the DNS server has been changed. And then once you get into the really sophisticated things, like, I don't know, it's angry. It doesn't want to talk to me today. Look at the blue thing. What is that? So we're basically, we started with knuckles. Look, the knuckles are sticking up, and we're ending with computer topography. So, this is going to keep a lot of people employed in certain fields for a long time, including you. And then a little help from our friends. How many of you know what the Turing test is? When can you not tell a computer is a computer? When does it appear to be a human consciousness? And I have a colleague who says, I'm not worried about computers that pass the Turing test. I'm worried about computers that figure out I'm looking for the Turing test and lie to me. I'm sorry, Dave, I don't know what you mean. I'm just a simple algorithm. I'm just an Amazon chatbot. Can I help you with that shirt you're purchasing? Get them. In any event, when you hear the tech guys, I mean the big ones, Larry Ellison and Bill Gates and those sorts, they're kind of nervous about, okay, we are getting into iterative computing that learns from itself, computing that is going to start programming its own apps. And they're like, where are we going from this? Is this kind of like nuclear? Are we about to make a jump that we can't get back from? I don't know, and I don't know when that might be possible. But I think overall, I think computers will be working for us for the foreseeable future. In which case, this is what will enable you to look at masses of data where it's like, look at the blue thing, and go, hey, algorithm, hey, software program, is there something I'm missing? Give me a list of 5 things that are interesting to you, that are unusual or whatnot. In other words, we won't just have artificial intelligence to answer questions that we want, which is kind of what computers do now, Excel spreadsheets and whatnot. You got to set the whole thing up and then chew through the numbers. This is, no, wait, you're doing it wrong. Had you thought of this? Might save some time, might help us with our knottiest problems. So either that or we're going to be vassals to this new techno-feudalism, and 5 supercomputers in Silicon Valley are going to tell us what to do. And who knows, maybe they'll improve things. We're not that wise all the time, but I don't spend a lot of time worrying about it. My mega trend, and I'm a big fan of history. I read as much about it as possible. And I had a book about Greek oratory and democracy, and it was actual speeches that had been captured. There weren't so many left, but speeches from the floor of their Senate. And one speech went like this: why is it that we lionize and deify the athlete? Why are we so into discus throwers and javelin throwers and gymnastics when it is the teachers? The teachers, they represent the next generation, our young. Why don't we pay them more? And I was looking at this, I was like, so we are not making great progress in that. You know, our government is corrupt. May I introduce you to Commodus and Caligula and Nero? Now, that's some fun stuff. In general, you've got human frailties, you've got human ways of processing information. I used to think that my work doing strategic analysis was 90% the data and getting the trends, doing trend research, asking the implications questions, building scenarios out. And 10% was we show up at the clients and we'll tell them what we found. And it will be great because we found the answer. And I've found that really my proportion of that has switched around now. It's 10% of the work is getting trend data and applying the tools to it. I can train a monkey to do that. But knowing what's going to anger the client and what they're going to emotionally shut down on, that is the trick. And God, I got an example. This was a bunch of quants too. I worked for an insurance company that brought me in, and they wanted me to do 4 hours, 2 on the techniques of how to look at the future, and 2 on trends that I saw. And so I did my technique stuff, trends, implications, forecasts, expert analysis, blah, blah, blah. And then I got to trends part. Okay, let's talk about megatrends. Well, the biggest one on the horizon, since you guys have this kind of demographics, aging populations. The baby boomer generation is 70 million, Gen X is 35, and so your average is here. This is moving rightward on the curve. This is a great success because it's better to be old than to die at 50 from sepsis. Awesome. But you're going to have more people over the age of 60 than you've ever had in this pool, blah, blah, blah. By the way, in terms of forecasting, demographics this is number 1. Like, unless y'all get hit by lasers, unless we hit every baby boomer with a laser, there's going to be roughly that proportion between the boomers and their children. I didn't think this was a big deal. This was my baseline. This should be, no one's going to argue with me. We can argue about artificial intelligence. We've got to stop it now before it's too late. We could have that debate, but whether there's twice as many boomers as Gen X, I don't have to discuss that. So I thought. I come out with that trend data, and in the back of the room, there was a gentleman of 67 years who stood up, and I did not know he was the president of the holding company of the company. I thought I was working with the CEO. No, he had a boss. I had not been told this. And he stands up and promptly intones, "There will always be consultants who will tell you that the sky is falling. There is no such thing as aging populations. It's not true, and I want to hear how you people are going to get next quarter's numbers up, and I want to hear it now." Verbatim. And then I stood at the foot of the room for 1 hour and 50 minutes while they all talked about their quarterly numbers. We hit a thing where we are not talking about that thing. And it was at that moment, among others, that I was like, this is not all cut and dry, freeze-dried, cold analysis. A lot of this is about people and what they hope for the future, what they fear for the future. And so you have to still get to know people, what they're going to do, and work with them on that warmer basis, because it can result in lots of fun stuff if you don't. So my implications, just generally, and I'd love to hear some questions. I think we're going to have to, because of what we talked about today, we're going to have to include some of the qualitative methods of more narrative discussions of the future whenever you're making a model. Life does not exist without the rigor. There's like sometimes a false battle between quants and quals, because you can't live one without the other. Like, you need detail people, you need engineers, you need folks that get all the details right. None of you would want to live in a world where I build the bridges. Nope, too much ADHD. We have 14 browser tabs open. Nope, I'd miss something. I know it. So, you wouldn't want to live in a world that didn't have people asking visionary questions. So we need each other. I think AI is going to improve our models and ask the right questions, and hopefully help drive both quantitative and qualitative. And my final thing for you would be, start asking those questions about how creepy this could get as you look for new models on worker safety and casualty, because you're going to get more data. It's going to get offered to you. It's going to get packaged up. They're going to send it to your office. I don't know when. They're already starting, though. People are monetizing their data sets. So if you haven't had those ethical discussions, maybe it'll be worth a breakout session in 2018. If you want more, I've written a couple books on how to look at the future. The first one's how to look at it. The second one is how we screw it up. And I'm easy to find. I'd love to take any questions and talk about some of your concerns. And otherwise, thank you for having me. This has been great.